Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to anyone that's listened to our previous webinars prior to the break we've had recently. I'm Chris Jones, Technical Director here at WorkRite. Well, we've been pretty busy and beavering away while we've not been doing these webinars. It's some new and exciting stuff which we will be showcasing today. The focus for today is on our brand new e-learning course, WorkRite Agile. We recognise the need for a more versatile Agile solution to address the fast-changing needs of the modern business. Ryan Church is with me again today. Ryan is our WorkRite sales manager, and today he's going to talk you through the design process we went through, the course content, and then looking at the management system behind it as well. If you've got any questions while Ryan's going through it, please pop them down in the questions section, which is probably bottom right of your screen right now in the webinar control panel. We'll do our best to get through as many of them as possible at the end of the session. For any we don't get to, what we'll always do is write them up and publish them alongside a recording of the video, should you wish to re-watch the video or share it with colleagues. Well, Ryan, it's been a busy few months, hasn't it?
It certainly has, Chris, yes. Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned there sort of a while back we recognised in the e-learning world there's a need for a DSE solution that wasn't just sort of based around either a fixed desk or a home working environment, or even people that are just on the move. So we about 18 months ago within WorkRite, we put together a project group that could build a template that customers could work from, and something that we think sort of reflects the modern way we're working, but also meets sort of the compliancy requirements for those people that are still static workstation users, or even hot deskers using the same equipment as allocated desks. But just recognizing there's a combination of different environments that people work in. So we created WorkRite Agile, and that's what I'm going to be taking people through today. But for those that have sort of been involved with our course release webinars in the past, historically we've read through the whole of the course and sort of taken people through sort of screen by screen, really sort of lingering on the questions within the content, just to get a thorough understanding of each and every slide. But what I've done today is something slightly different. I've recorded a user journey of our Agile working course, purely because there's more content here, and there's a few options, and I want to have the sort of flexibility to be able to talk around what is on the screen rather than navigating through. So if you did want to see what is on each page, or sorry, on each screen in detail, like you said at the beginning, Chris, do sort of revisit this recording, and please do register on our free trial at the end, which I'll give details for to go through it in more detail. But I do want to sort of not whistle through the content, but I want to get through more the concept and sort of the overview of the idea behind building this course in its entirety, rather than like I say, lingering on each of the screens. So I'm going to press play and pause it a few times here, but like I say, this is the user's journey that I've recorded specifically for today's webinar. Before I do press play though, all of our legacy courses sort of work on what I would call a linear, sort of a traditional linear e-learning style, where the user starts at the beginning and works through all of the content, regardless of the subject. They're starting at module 1, working through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many modules there are, finishing on a test, and if there is an assessment, they finish on that self-assessment. With this, you've got a number of options. There's decision trees within the course, and sort of to help with that, we also have audio with this course. Now, I have allowed the audio to run for the first paragraph of the first screen, so I'm hoping that transfers through using the GoToMeeting facility here. So I'm going to go quiet for the first sort of probably 10-15 seconds to allow that audio to run, and as soon as that's finished, I'll duck back in and start talking you through the screen. But here we go. Best of luck to us, Chris. For those that didn't get the audio, that has just read to you the first paragraph of the first module, which is the core e-learning module here. So everybody, regardless of the environment in which they work, they're going to be getting sort of core ergonomic training here, talking about how workstation safety is important, talking about sit-stand workstations, good sitting posture, all the sort of good ergonomic content that we've seen. So sort of in sort of historical DSE training courses. You've got interactivity, as you can see on the screen here. So we're clicking on hotspots for a particular individuals, adjusting the seating position. Then when they're in a good position, they've got a nice smile on their face. So we're getting the like I say, the basics of sitting at an appropriate workstation, the information across to users right from the off. So what we're looking at now is we're going through all of the detail that you would expect in a standard legacy DSE training package, but we're covering in a bit more detail with WorkRite Agile. Things like you can see here, the stress content, so aspects around the workstation, aspects around the way the person works rather than just around the workstation. Things like healthy eating, lifestyle, well-being. We've really given ourselves a sort of a wide template of content that we think customers are keen to explore with their staff. We've given ourselves a sort of a broad spectrum of content. Whilst the screen is going through here, the different sort of aspects of temperature, space, glare on screens, noise, all the traditional DSE aspects that the regulations meet. What we have done is given ourselves sort of the freedom to talk about other subjects. We've still got to talk about temperature. So if someone is hot or cold in the environment, make sure that the person knows from the offset that they should dress appropriately rather than waiting until we get to an assessment and asking them there to say, are you hot or you're cold? So like I say, we're giving ourselves that freedom, and we're going to go into a bit more detail to talk about things that aren't just around DSE. So things like slips, trips and falls. These are things that somebody that's working maybe in an office for shorter periods, maybe the main place they work is at home or on the move. When they come into the office, this might be the only touch point you have with the end user to talk about things like slips, trips and falls, working from heights, manual handling, and other risk factors as well. So PAT testing is important as well. If the person, maybe they're taking work home from the office for the first time, they don't know that, they may not know that they need to ensure that the equipment they're using is PAT tested appropriately. So like I say, we've created a large template of content, and all of the customers that we are working with are implementing this slightly differently and editing it to make sure it fits with their culture, making sure it communicates the message that they need to communicate to staff. And if I just pause it there for a second, being still in the core content here, we are still making sure that the person, regardless of the way they work, can use the equipment that they have appropriately. You can see here, I'm just taking over control of the video here. If the person was sat on an office chair, as you would hope they were, by clicking on here, they're going to see how to adjust the office chair. But if they are working from home as their primary working environment, and they're sat on a chair that doesn't have that flexibility, we want to make sure that they have the capacity to be able to understand how to get the best of the equipment they're using. So not suggesting for a second that chair in the previous screen is a compliant DSE chair. We all know it's not. But like I say, if the person is using that for even short periods of time, making sure they know how to get themselves to the appropriate level using cushions or adjusting the height of their screen with books and various different either products or tools to get themselves in the most appropriate, comfortable position. Now, again, I'm going to pause on this screen here because this is where the user's journey starts to be tailored to the individual. I've got four options here. I've got, if I just hover over the top here, we've got the desktop computer, we've got a tablet, we've got a smartphone, and we've got a laptop. What we're asking the user to do here at this point is to basically input the equipment that they are using, and this is then going to be tracked in their self-assessment. So when you're looking at an end user's self-assessment, you'll be able to see what equipment that person is using and relate it to the questions they've answered. Because I've paused the screen there for a moment, folks, because we are going sort of a good few steps beyond just working with the DSE regulations here, which are all covered within this content, but because we're going so much further and talking about various different environments, we felt it wasn't appropriate to talk in the first person and say you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Instead, we're using scenario-based situations which are talking about different characters, and different characters work in this concept here are working in different environment. So Zoe, if I press play again here, Zoe is our on-the-go worker. Tim is our home worker. David is our hot desker, And then we have Anne, who is our traditional allocated office desk worker, but is also our health and safety trainer. Now, this is the really, really important page here. This is where the user's journey can go off in a number of different directions. I've paused the screen again, purely because I need to discuss the options that we have here. At this point here, up to this point here, everybody, regardless of the way they work, has been been going through the same core training. So there would be no differences other than selecting the type of chair they're sitting on, but there'd be no other differences to the education that they've received up to this point here. What we're looking to achieve by giving the individual the option to select maybe their primary working environment, maybe their contracted working environment, whatever wording you'd like to use as a customer. But by giving them the capacity to be able to choose the environment in which they work, we're tailoring the rest of the course to the individual. So the question we read here is, what type of environment do you work in? That's pretty descriptive, but you may want to be more descriptive here and say, please select your primary working environment. Please select your contracted working environment. Please, you'll have the ability to come back and look at secondary or tertiary environments later on if it's appropriate to you. I think what I want to get across at this point here is that the course is designed to be tailored to the customer. And just because we call these environments on the go, home, hot desking, and office, doesn't mean that terminology has to be consistent with your implementation of this particular product here. But if I just press play and let this run through, the individual in this example here, they are looking at the options: on the go, home, office, hot desking, and the individual would choose the home environment. Now, by selecting home, I'm following Tim's journey here, and we're talking about Tim, the home worker. We then have, I'm going to pause very quickly here again as well. We then have a sub-profiling question. And we're using the wording here that says, do you habitually use a workstation at home for prolonged periods of time? Now, again, like I say, this is terminology that we are using within our off-the-shelf course. That's I have to flag Chris for his phone going off there. Okay, so we're asking the question, do you habitually use a workstation at home for prolonged periods of time? This question in your example may read, are you a contracted home worker? Do you work from home more than a day, more than 2 days a week, more than 4 days a month? We are not dictating what this question here reads, but what we're trying to achieve by asking this question is we're dictating whether the person needs to complete a full DSE test and assessment, or we're just looking for them to complete awareness training for the environment in which they work. So an example I always use with customers is, if you have staff that are allowed to take work home but are not contracted home workers, would you want to be asking them to complete a full DSE assessment of their home environment? If you would, we could take this question out, because you'd ask everybody to complete the full DSE content, test and self-assessment. But if you just want to make sure that the person is comfortable in that home environment, keep this question in and you'll see what I mean. We're able to do a high-level risk assessment instead of a full DSE assessment, which is going to come back with particular issues. So I said, no, I'm not a habitual home worker. So I go through the advantages. Advantages being sort of not having to commute, taking projects home and working on reports in a non-distracting environment, but also the disadvantages, things like blurring of boundaries, feelings of isolation. Sometimes people don't consider if the person's working from home for longer periods. It's really, like I say, an education piece related to the way the individual is working. I know firsthand, working from home initially, if you've got a problem with IT issues, it's a phone call to the IT team rather than walking across the office to go and see them. So making people aware of that and communicating the message that you want to get across to staff is the main objective with this particular course. Simple things like, if you're reading a document rather than inputting, maybe you don't need to sit at a fully compliant workstation for that reading period, but when you're inputting information, get yourself set up appropriately. And hopefully you can see, and when you come back and maybe retrack through this content, you'll see the type of tone we're looking at delivering is very, very much guidance driven. But you've got to get the core information in there as well. So making sure the screen's at the appropriate height. If you're using a document holder, make sure it's in the right position and your keyboard's in the right place as well. Take breaks when you need to. Interactivity through the course, I mean, simply giving the person options, making sure they're interacting with the course. Now, this is an important part here. I've already said that through the selection that this user's gone through, that I'm a home worker. Sorry, I'm working from home, but I'm not a contracted home worker. However, I still want to make sure that the individual here has the ability to be able to flag particular issues. So I'm calling this sort of risk assessment here. This is the big red flag assessment. This isn't the full DSE assessment if the person had said, yes, I am a contracted home worker. This is asking very straightforward questions to say, are you able to achieve a suitable setup as described in the training? Now, the options we're giving here are simple yes and no. If the person was to answer no, it'll open up a free text box, giving them the capacity to be able to add in the detail of what the issue is. And that is it's a key point here. Anybody that's familiar with sort of traditional DSE learning, maybe a number of you are using our AssessRite course or our homeworkers courses, you should, with any decent e-learning self-assessment package, have the capacity to be able to trigger actions to appropriate people within an organization. By that, I mean you're able to ask questions of the end user and based on their answer, either guide them automatically how to self-resolve that issue or flag an issue to a facilitator, maybe a DSE assessor, a health and safety trainer, somebody responsible for triaging that particular issue. So I've said here, why are you not able to achieve a suitable setup and what would you need to do so? The individual's been asked the question here. The wording can be completely tailored to you, but this text here that the user has input will be triggered automatically to that person that is responsible for resolving this type of issues. So they then have the ability to be able to pick up the phone to the end user and help them out firsthand. There can be as many questions as you like in that sort of big red flag self-assessment, or you can keep it like we have in this example here to a limit of 2 or 3, maybe 4 questions. If the end user was only working in the home environment, but you wouldn't classify them as a DSE user and you only want them to do awareness training, technically that could be the end user completed at this point here. Now, we're not suggesting that that's a compliant way of working at this point here, but it's not for us to dictate whether you want to be providing more or less training with this package. From this recording here, what we're now going to be doing is going through the secondary and tertiary environments, but again, it's worth saying that I've already been through the home working content. Had I selected on the go or office at this point, I would only I wouldn't have been through the home content at this point. So this is the ability to be able to go through a second, third, or choose my first environment again here. On the go, this is the real agile content. This is your truly mobile individual that's working in coffee shops, working on trains, somebody that we really initially, when building this package, we were thinking about these people at the forefront of the course. What we found, and I've paused it again there, what we have found is that whilst agile working is in a lot of people's eyes somebody that is working on the move quite frequently, the actual word agile can mean any number of things. So hot desking, somebody that's just taking work away from the office for short periods of time. So this on-the-go worker, and Zoe's our on-the-go worker, this is like I say, the person that is physically on the move the most often. And you may only have a handful of people working in this way, but you may have some people that work in this way for as a new way of working. Maybe you're introducing the concept of working away from the office. Maybe you're encouraging people not to be based at their office-based workstation all the time. But it's about providing the appropriate training for that individual. Jan is the character on your screen now. This is the character that we talked through the security issues of working on the go. Someone that's working on some sensitive information in a coffee shop needs to be aware that using a privacy screen or having their back to the wall is vitally important. So again, hopefully you're understanding that you can see here that we're trying to get across appropriate content based on the way the individual is working, but we're not dictating that you have all of the content as we have put it together here. Okay, so when is it okay to use soft seating? If you've made a good choice, you get the right information. But again, you've got your risk assessment. It's only a shortened risk assessment here, but we want to make sure the person is comfortable. Are they suffering from any discomfort? If they were to answer negatively to any of these, this is where the triggers go to the DSE assessor for somebody to pick up the phone to the end user and say, look, you've highlighted something some sort of pain, some sort of problem. Let's get this dealt with in person. But at this point here, if the person was working at home and on the go, this point here, they could be complete. But equally, they could be able to go back through the rest of their content. But you'll notice that we still haven't been through a full DSE assessment just yet. We've just done our high-level risk assessment, which is the example we're going to go through now. I may not be a home worker or an on-the-go worker. I may just be an office worker. I may just work in that environment. I may not be a hot desker. I may have an allocated desk. This is the route in which that individual would follow. And this is, for those who are using our legacy at AssessRite course, this is the AssessRite journey we're going through here. Somebody that is a hot desker, we're talking about the hot desking environment, the way the equipment can be used, the way taking time to set up your equipment is important. But this is really a lot of content drawn here from, like I say, traditional DSE training, because we're talking about a traditional workstation environment, the office. But again, like I said previously, we're giving ourselves the sort of flexibility to talk about other aspects of the office environment, not just the desk. We're talking about somebody doing some research, or about using meeting rooms appropriately, how to use soft seating if you've got soft seating. I mean, there's always going to be an individual that maybe just sets up their laptop in a soft seating area, only intending to be there for 20 minutes, half an hour, but 3, 4, 5 hours later, they realize they're still sitting there hunched over a coffee table in a soft seating area, and they've got causing themselves problems. This course is designed to make sure that person understands that these are real issues in today's modern working world, and give them the tools that they need to be able to understand the potential risks of these particular scenarios. We've still got a red flag risk assessment for this particular individual, because I may only be working in this environment for a short period of time. Still the opportunity to flag those big issues. But at this point here, I'm being asked the question, now what? So I'm going to read this one to you. As you have identified that you regularly use a workstation, you are required to do some further training and undertake a self-assessment of your workstation. This is part of the display screen equipment DSE regulation. So in this bit here, this is where we are reaffirming those key DSE, the fundamental aspects of working with a display screen. So we're making sure the end user knows how to adjust their workstation, because in their profile, in their self-profiling before we've got to this point, they have said, by answering the questions appropriately, they have said that they need to do a full DSE test and assessment. So we're reaffirming the core principles of a decent workstation setup. Are you working at a static desk or a height adjustable desk? It's giving the different seating options for each of those, and also how to adjust your chair appropriately. Armrests, all of the stuff that you'd expect from a traditional DSE e-learning course. Removing clutter, making sure your desk is tidy, consistent tone with the illustration, and how should your computer equipment be set up. All the stuff that you'd be familiar with seeing, again, reaffirming document holders as well. A couple more slides on this particular section, and then we'll be at the end of the content here. Very conscious that just from sitting at the other end of the screen, watching all of this content work through, it's important to point out that there is a lot of content here, but the end user is only going to see the content that is appropriate to the way they work. If you want to make mandatory one of the environments, maybe you want to make mandatory the office environment, and everybody goes through that content, the user journey is around the 20 to 25 minutes mark. But if the individual then decides to go on and go through the on-the-go content and the home content, it's going to take a little longer, but that could be made optional. It depends on what you're looking to achieve for your staff. Now I'm going to pause it again here, because we have just been through the content. I didn't want to go through the test and full assessment on this particular webinar, conscious of everybody's time. But at this point here, because I've said that I'm a DSE user, I would be asked to do a full test to prove my understanding of the DSE content, and then go through a full DSE assessment, 90-odd questions, using the HSC's DSE assessment questionnaire as the starting point, and having triggers firing off appropriately for somebody that does have particular problems with their workstation. But from a content perspective, and Chris, I don't know if we've got any questions at this point here, but from a course content perspective, that really is where we've got to, and hopefully I've given a sort of maybe a bit of a whistle stop look at how we've put it together, but that's what we've created for the end user. Hopefully it's of use to people.
Thanks, Ryan. That was brilliant. Hopefully it did give everyone a good taste for, what we've been up to and how busy we've been over the last few months, and coming up really with something genuinely very new. We have got a few questions that have come in. A couple of people have commented that there was no voiceover at the beginning of the video, and I think that's just down to the webinar, because we could hear it through the video, but I think the webinar technology sort of got the better of us there, so we could see the video, but there were some voiceovers that we couldn't hear coming through, so apologies.
Thankfully on that, Chris.
Proper question that came up here was, what information is getting tracked when you do the course? Is it just for compliance, or is there more to it than that?
Okay, I think the best thing for me to do with that is, if I just pause that video running again, if I go to the management system, because this is where all training records are maintained for all of our courses, but it's worth showing here that with any of our e-learning courses, you get the management system included. Compliance is top of the list. It's what we're looking to achieve with any of the training, but equally, you're looking to give yourself the options to complete. There we go. Let's look at. Okay. Let me just log into that's always the way in the heat of the moment. Let's log into our demo account and give you. That's what I'm looking for. Right, so yes, answering your question, Chris, you can tell I'm a chap and I'm struggling to multitask here. Right, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so a completed assessment, that's what I wanted to show. In this example here, I've got Ella Kerr has completed an assessment. So from a compliancy perspective, I can see her completed training records. This is a demo system, so I can view her completed report, her completed assessment, and see here the issues of that assessment. Oh, some good examples. Do you experience head, neck, or backache whilst working on a computer, which you think may be associated with its use? There's an often, so she in her assessment has answered often. We can see that issue is not started. We can put here, have arranged an assessment, and then we can add that note there against an individual assessment issue, date, time, and the person I logged in as. There's your audit trail from a compliancy perspective. Not sure in my panic to log into that demo system if that's actually answered the question, Chris.
Thanks, Ronnie. I think in a roundabout way it does. I mean, I think really what the takeaway is Agile is built on top of the same existing technology that WorkRite's always been based on, in terms of the sort of underlying management system and tracking and that sort of stuff. So I think that's what the question was really aimed at. So right. Those that are used to WorkRite, Agile is, although the course and the presentation to the end user is completely new and different, actually from the management side of it, we can continue in a similar way to we used to. I think that's kind of the nuts of it.
Correct. Okay. Yes, thanks, Chris.
Okay, super. So I've got another question here. Can we make a full DSE assessment mandatory as part of the course?
You can, yes. So if I go back to my video here, I'm going to try and get to the right point to select the environment selection. 4 minutes 23 seconds I've got noted down here. So at this page here, there we go. At this point here, the individual making that selection, you can make mandatory the office environment section. So they are the course will show as incomplete until they've completed that particular environment there, and shuffling these icons around so that the office icon is to the left, and then you've got home and on the go section is incredibly simple using our course builder function, or we can build that for the customer as well. But yes, the course can show as incomplete until the office section with a full DSE assessment is complete. Similar to traditional e-learning, it's you can lead a horse to water sometimes, but if they're reminded on a daily basis they haven't finished it, you have got that audit trail to say you've been chasing someone to do what you've asked them to do. So yes.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, so we've got a question about how, I'm going to paraphrase it slightly, but how the whole course is packaged together, how you go about, well, really any additional modules. So someone's asking about modules for stress, manual handling, and slip, strips, and falls, and how, I guess, how that would be incorporated in it as well.
Okay, so what we've done in the main sort of templates, in the core content, we've sort of hung that content in there as the off-the-shelf. Here we go. I was just trying to find the right step here. We've included slip, strips, and falls, working from heights, and manual handling in the core section, but we have got half a dozen customers implementing this course at the moment. They've either added to this content in their courses or stripped it out entirely. So removing stress, moving anything on pat testing if it's not appropriate to the message they're looking to communicate. But at this point, yeah, we can either build that work in for you, so we can develop your course for you, or the eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted a tool that we have on this demo system here, which is the course builder functionality. I'm going to just dip into that quickly because there is something that we're excited to talk about next month, actually, is the course builder function. We're giving users the capacity to be able to edit the course themselves and maybe add in their own links, content, without having to come to us to edit that. But at the moment, we can build it for you, or we can switch the course builder function on for you, and you can edit the courses yourself. Anything else, Chris?
Okay, yeah, I've got another one. This is one that actually is a really important question for you to explain, which I'm glad it's been asked. And will the Agile working course, or can it replace the WorkRite DSE course? So assess right.
Straight answer is yes. It's an alternative to DSE, assess right, or home workers or mobile workers. The straight answer is you wouldn't need to run both. What we've done is the Agile working course. I'm sorry, for those looking at the screen here, I'm looking at our demo, our legacy suite of courses, including the Agile course as well. What Agile includes in full are assess right, which is the office-based DSE course. We have mobile workers, which is further down the screen here. We've got mobile workers. Okay, so our mobile right course and our home workers DSE course. It is an alternative to those three courses in their entirety. So you wouldn't need to run assess right, home workers, and mobile and Agile. They would be an alternative solution for those. Equally, I've mentioned a few times slip, strips, and falls, working from heights, and manual handling. I'm not suggesting that at all that the manual handling content in the Agile course is sufficient to cover all of your manual handling needs, but it's worth a customer looking at the content to see if it is the only touch point you get with an end user. Having them go through a full manual handling course may not be, you may not be able to get the time allocation from an end user to go through a full course, which is why we've included aspects of that in WorkRite Agile, so that you can, like I say, it's your touch point. We can cover it to some degree. So the slip, strips, and falls, the work from heights. Those courses are touched on, but to answer the questions again, assess right, home workers, and mobile right would not need to run in conjunction with Agile, because Agile covers them.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Well, we're certainly run out of time. We're just over 1 o'clock, so we'll probably bring this to a close. So I guess just one question from me on behalf of those that are listening is what would the next steps be if anyone was interested in taking this further?
Excellent, Chris. It's almost as if we scripted that part. Thank you.
Scripted, yeah.
There we go. Right. So, but the important bit here is, folks, this is we'll follow up with everybody that's registered with a recording of this. But equally, if you are sort of super keen to get a look at this straight away, here's your webpage here. This is thepostro.co.uk/WorkRite. If you register on a free trial, if you are an existing WorkRite customer, you will need to use an alternative email address, and it will need to be an active email address, because you'll need to receive your authentication email to be able to access the demo system. But but when you're registered on that guest account, you'll be able to select the WorkRite Agile course and go through it in its entirety. Like I said at the start, there's quite a bit of content to go through word for word in a webinar such as this, but that is where you would need to go to see the course in its entirety, or you can wait until we send the recording of the video out, which will be no later than Monday. So 2 options there: self-register or have a look at the recording. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Ryan. No, that wraps us up for today. So thanks very much for your tuning in, and we'll speak to you again soon. Many thanks. Bye.
Thanks very much.